That's why he's interested. I saw him.
You all right, BJ? I will call this regular council meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. Mr. Chapman, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you remain standing for a moment, please. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your divine intervention in helping us to coordinate and move our elderly residents in a safe and orderly manner during the small electrical fire at the Oaks last week. And we thank you for all of our residents and first responders of this fine community who gave 10,000% to make what could have been tragic, that instead turned out to be an outpouring of love and goodwill in our community. And Lord, bless those who passed in the recent mass shootings and help and bless their families and their communities to find a way to begin to heal. We ask for all of this tonight in your holy name. Amen. Okay, Kathy, roll please.
Carter. Walter.
Here.
Howell.
Here.
Barstow.
Here.
Hayes.
Here.
Pickens.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum present. First thing on the agenda tonight.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to amend tonight's agenda to add a presentation by Nick, please pronounce this for me, Nick Chizek and Amanda Mead from Trillium and Grube to do the post-audit conference with council. I'd like that to go before Ms. Walther and your proclamation.
Okay, very good. I have a motion to amend. Seconded by Mr. Powell. Discussion and roll.
Walter.
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Barstow.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Pickens.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Okay, motion is passed, which brings up Nick and Amanda from Julian and Group. Would you please approach the podium? How are you, sir?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Have a handout for that real quick.
Jamie, do you need to prelude any of this, or just?
No, we've already pretty much gone over everything, but
Okay.
I need him to come in to answer any of the questions.
All right, very good.
So the packet I'm handing out right now, or being handed out, I should say, is just our independent audits letter, as well as the audit standards letter that goes in any kind of, any audit, any government audit that we do. I didn't add any financial statements or anything like that. It hasn't been certified by Auditor of State yet.
Today.
Did it go through the deck
It
filing?
was certified today.
Okay, I didn't get that email. It's been certified today. Well, it'll be posted on their website probably sometime this week. You'll be able to see it. I'm just going to kind of quickly go over what's in the letters. I think I see a lot of familiar faces, so most of you have been through an audit, obviously. The independent auditor's report is just our opinion letter. It states what opinions are our responsibilities as well as the management's responsibilities in providing us information that we're looking for to substantiate the numbers that were given to us basically for the audit report. Our job is to make sure that the numbers are materially correct, that the financial statement that's being presented to us is accurate. So basically the first, like I said, the first page, it just talks about our responsibilities that we audit under government audit standards. And the second page is going to be the opinion. Excuse me. We have an unmodified opinion. Essentially, that means just that we didn't make any adjustments. It used to, I don't know if you're familiar with the old terms. Used to be what were the old ones? I didn't change them. Anyway, they simplified it to make it less confusing. So now, if it's modified, that means you got some issues potentially that we can't substantiate certain numbers or certain areas. If it's unmodified, that just means we did not change anything that was presented to us and we felt it was materially correct. There is an emphasis of matter paragraph. We typically add something like this if there is a change to your beginning balances, your beginning fund balances. And this all had to do with the OPEB restatement, which is a new gadget that came out requiring, I don't know if any of you guys are here, a few years ago when the net pension liability came out, just created this huge liability on your financial statements that is not an actual liability for you. It's a liability for your pension systems. Since Ohio you run your pensions through a pension system that does, for Ohio, it's their liability. However, it's required to be on your books. If all fails, it's not something that you're gonna have to pay, but it's a liability that has to go on there. So it's a large liability that had to be added because of this GASB pronouncement. So if you were to look at your, I think it says note 3, it would kind of describe what that liability was. I don't remember the amount right now, but it's in the millions. Required supplementary information is just your management discussion analysis. If you ever open up a CAFR or any kind of audit, honestly, that's one of the first areas I would look at. It's a lot of comparisons from year to year, and it's just a lot of things in layman's terms that just kind of make sense. Once you get into the notes of the financial statements, there's a lot of requirements in there that's kind of hard to read through unless you have a working knowledge of governmental accounting. And then it also talks about the schedule of the net pension assets, net pension, and other post-employment liability. That's all that those new GASBs, it has a requirement in the back that we have to list basically the last 10 years of what you put into the pension and things like that. After that, we get into the supplementary and other information. Since it's a CAFR, you have additional stuff in your report. There's the introductory section. There's basically every fund and every budget is laid out there. It's very transparent. If you don't have a CAFR, probably 75% of the funds that the city would operate get rolled into one big fund, and you don't really see the activity of each individual fund. Whereas a CAFR, like I said, every fund is going to be out there, the budget for every fund, the revenues, expenditures, and everything for every single fund. And that would be in the back in the combining statements. And then there's a statistical section, which just gives a lot of statistics for the city for the last 10 years, essentially. For the stats section, as well as the first section, the introductory section, we don't have an opinion on that. It's just a lot of it's either facts or there's a lot of forecasting going on and things like that we can't really opine on, but we'll read through and make sure anything that's referencing any of the audits we've done or have been performed, any numbers that have actually been audited, we'll make sure those numbers are accurate at least. We skip to the next couple pages. We call it a GAGS letter. It's the Government Audit Standards letter. It just talks about that a government audit is based on internal controls. We look at internal controls every year and kind of assess where we need to perform more testing, more analytical testing, less or more significant testing and things like that. If we find an area that the internal controls aren't working properly or they're just kind of not very good, we would probably consider that area a little more risky and perform more tests on it. And then when there it talks about significant deficiencies, material weaknesses, those are basically we find issues with your internal controls that either could or did result in an error. Depends on the magnitude, as if we call it a SIG diff or a material weakness. Within these, it does say that there was no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies that we noted from our testing of the controls. The next page talks about compliance. So there's a lot of compliance issues with the city that they have to follow, different ORC codes. Not all of them, because you're a charter city, you have to follow. However, we do have to test all the mandatory compliance sections that the Auditor of State requires us to. During our test of those compliances, we did not note any non-compliance to note in here. We can find small things here and there that are just, we would either give like a verbal recommendation or something like that, but there was nothing to note in the actual audit report. So all in all, it's a very clean report. The next page, the last letter is called the management letter. This will not be posted on AOS's website, the Auditor of State's website, but it is a public record. It can be requested by somebody if they wanted to read it over. These would be any kind of recommendation, be it compliance issues or control issues that we noted that were significant enough to note in a letter and be produced to the Auditor of State as well as the public, but not significant enough to be in the actual audit report. We did have one recommendation dealing with the severance payouts. We noted miscalculations with the severance payouts. A few individuals were overpaid. I don't know the exact amount, but maybe 9 or so individuals were overpaid. And I think there's few have paid back since then, and I think the rest are being contacted by the Auditor of State or who else to pay that money back. The amount in total between all of the individuals is a little over $1,500, as you can see in here, so it wasn't significant enough to put in the report or anything like that, but it was submitted to the Auditor of State, and like I said, they are trying to recoup those funds. And I want to thank you for working with us again. We've been working here for quite a while. I've been working with Jamie for quite a while too, so we really appreciate being down here.
Well, we appreciate you coming tonight. Would you do me a favor and
Sure.
state your full name and address just for the record, please?
Sure, Nicholas Chiswick. My work address is 333 County Line Road West, Westerville, Ohio.
Okay. Any questions? Council, any questions at all?
I have one question. In the error that was found, can you give us some, how did that come to light? How did you find that?
One thing we typically test every year, even if it's not a significant area, is the severance payout. Everybody does it a little bit differently, depending on the negotiated agreements or whatever you have in place, your charter. And so we tested like 1 or 2 of the 10 or 11 employees paid out. We noticed miscalculations. We tested a couple more, noted again, ended up testing them all, basically, and noted most of them had some sort of miscalculation going on.
Just to follow up, and I noticed in here you have a recommendation for a second review. Second review by whom?
I think most of it was going through the payroll only.
What we're doing now, originally Janice, as the finance manager, was basically running them, she calculated them and then run them through. What I'm doing now is, and they were done at the last week pay period that they worked. So now what we're doing is we're waiting until they get their final pay for pay worked, the next pay period, then we look at their balances, and I actually calculate them and give them to Janice to make sure that they tie into what she sees, and then she processes them in payroll, and before she submits payroll, she shows me what pay quarter is going to pay out, and then I make sure that they mark it up. So it's kind of a back and forth.
Okay, so it's still internal. The second review is internal.
Yeah,
We're not
yeah,
having
it's just a second set of eyes to make
Yeah,
sure
yeah,
that,
exactly.
because a lot of these were so small that in a large payout, you wouldn't have necessarily known that, hey, they got an extra $60. There was one that was significant that probably should have popped pretty quickly, but we didn't see it.
I was just asking how if we were having
Yeah.
an outside firm look at
Oh,
it.
no,
I thought that was
No, it's just
$1,500.
another set of eyes.
Yeah.
It was their recommendation for
Very good.
internal control.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Yes, I think Mr. Nicholson may have told us, but I'm gonna just ask either he or you while you're standing there is, the main mechanism for the overpayments, was it a program? Was it, what seemed to cause it, number one? And, let's go with the answer to that one first, and then I gotta follow up real quick.
Okay.
Do you want me to take it? Or you got it?
Oh, yeah, you can go for it.
There were two ways it happened. One individual, in the last pay period, used 16 hours of vacation time. So when we were doing it during the same pay period, there should have been a manual deduction of 16, but instead it accidentally got added. So it was a flip of 32 hours. So that was the biggest dollar amount. That was about $900. So the $1,500, one person got like $900. The rest are all fairly small, and what was happening was, in time and attendance, we tracked to 3 decimal places, so hours are to 3 decimal places. Well, when we transferred it, the payroll system didn't really know how to handle the 3 decimal places. So instead of truncating or rounding or popping up an error message saying, I don't know what to do with 3 decimal places. It did random things, and we just didn't catch that it had kind of a mind of its own. And so now what we're doing also as part of that process is instead of transferring the hours from time and attendance over to payroll, we're calculating the actual compensation and then just manually putting that in payroll. So there's no more transfer of data. It's going to be a pure offline calculation, and then the number is going to be keyed in. It eliminates that risk.
Out of curiosity, was the big dollar amount the trigger, or what, did you find the problem someplace else and discovered, and I realize $900 is not, you know, whoa,
Right.
but still, it's the largest that it was. Was that found secondarily as a result of our own audit procedures?
I don't recall. Was that?
I believe it was.
Okay. Yeah.
They brought it to my attention that they were having difficulty matching our numbers, because what they do is they independently, we tell them how, you know, they get paid for 1/4 of sick hours up to a certain number, and tell them the average, you know, their final pay rate, and so they independently try to calculate what they would come up with and compare it to what we did, and they had, I think, did 2, and they said, I'm having trouble, so let me look into it, and I ran all 11, and that's when we realized that 2 were underpaid, 1 was paid exactly, and then the remainders were overpaid.
One last quick follow-up. This year, it seems like we have had more if-then type of situations with payment. Will you look at that, and I guess that would be next year, I don't know if you saw any, is that triggered for you? I know when I first got elected, they sent us to new council training, and one of the persons was a fiscal expert, and they just hammered home, you never want if-then, you never want if-then. We've had a couple. And so, I mean, is that something you look at, or would your data not include that?
Are you referring to like then and now?
Yeah,
That's what I call if-thens.
Yeah.
My
Then and
problems, it's then and now.
No, that's fine. I just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing.
Jeez.
We do look at then and nows. We look at any kind of expenditures you have. We look at the dates of the actual invoice, the date of the PO. If the PO is after the date of the invoice, we look to make sure there is a then and now in place. I have been to cities and stuff where pretty much everything is then and now. We'll give a recommendation to, because it should be only used for either emergencies or kind of, there's some occasions where it just has to be done. But if you're constantly doing them over and over again, that could be an issue and raise a red flag. Yeah, but we do look into those. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Anything else for Nick? All right, thank you, sir, and thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
Okay,
We
this
have to
is
sign form.
all for,
Signature form.
oh, yep. Name and address for the record, please.
Dr. Ann Walther, 7899 Columbia Road, Pataska, Ohio. Thank you for adding me to the agenda. I come here today as the volunteer administrator of the Pataska Recreation Association. In 2010, the city was at a crossroads, and many on council found the pool to be an eyesore. A prior lessor had determined the pool was too expensive and out of date to remain. Discussions of demolition and fill-in were prominent. And 1 year prior, the Pataska Recreation Association filled the gap that was created by financial constrictions on our community. And the community pool seemed to be the final victim. Did PRA know what we were doing? No, not at all. But our group of volunteers, local businesses, and service groups believed in our community asset, believed in the people who came before that built her stone by stone, bake sale by bake sale, and believed in the mission of her presence and in the footprint of her success. Today, the city is once again at a crossroads, but this time our pool is vibrant and thriving. A place families enjoy, youth gain valuable work experience, volunteers feel that sense of community, and patrons learn how to swim. Beyond that fence, the pool brings hundreds upon hundreds of people to our local business. Now, it is simply unmanageable that our community pool would not be in existence, and we have come a long way. My husband likes to say that I caught him in a weak moment. I believe that he and hundreds of others simply felt that there was not the option of defeat. Mr. Jeff Chapman, who sits here, came join us this evening, at the time was the president of the Porpoise swim team Their need was simple, a place to host the swim team events. Miss Jen Coulter is an outspoken proponent of the importance of water safety and feels that there is always a need for the skill to swim. She joined our team and continues to be a part of the swim lesson, serves as a swim lesson coordinator. And the Patasko Lions and Leo Cub, they understood our need for service and support, and they looked at the old, tired, and vandalized pool building and believed she could be resurrected. So a core group was formed. Local businesses, churches, and nonprofits lent their time, talent, and financial resources, and reluctantly, a slight majority of council agreed to give us a try, while a few select were steadfast in not supporting the pool at all. But try we did. No plan, no pool knowledge, and just one focus: to make her successful and to continue the historical mission, to the extent that for the first 4 years, including Mr. Chapman, volunteered their entire summer to its success. And looking at the photo I let out to you, I can't imagine anyone deciding their entire summer would be spent with that object, right? Our list of providers, sponsors, and volunteers is long and varied. But today the pool stands with Chemtrol automatic chemical units, umbrellas and lounge chairs, rebuilt and new pumps, a strong and mighty sand filter, an air recirculation system, beautiful wall graphics and signage, overlaid bathroom floors, new equipment, a one-of-a-kind chlorine dispenser system, a personalized swim lesson instruction plan, office shelving and computer software, public Wi-Fi, and even a security system. I could go on, but at this point, I'll just say the pool is returning to you as a turnkey. PRA has bridged the gap, and now time has come for the city to take the reins. Mr. Lanier Crawford has spent over 20 hours over the last 3 weeks being a part of the PRA team and will continue to do so for the following 2 weeks. Following training modules that I created and building upon his new CPO knowledge, he's put on his swimmies, and I can say even stepped a toe or two in the deep end. On August 19th, we will say goodbye to Mr. Jeff Chapman, our pool manager, and Mr. Crawford will take the plunge. But we're not leaving him without a few assistive devices. PRA has a strong, confident team of local community lifeguards and hosts, the large structure of equipment that will continue to be supported by vendors who know her idiosyncrasies, and a solid community-driven and structured model that will serve as a foundation upon which to build. We're also leaving you with a great recreation program in the Pataskala area swim team. This team has seen its numbers rise steadily from 130 to almost 230 over the last 7 years. This team was once in the bottom third of their league, but this year finished second. And these participants consistently set school records and actively collect college scholarships. The board is looking forward to working with the city in the future. But Mr. Crawford and the community pool cannot be successful without this city council. Much of our success is unique and is created in the response of community needs. Weekly pool newsletters, active Facebook and website, availability for evening and weekend parties and gatherings, and support of the community and charitable activities must remain as they are paramount to her success. For example, the Licking Memorial Active Fit. The pool is important for this activity to be a success. It's one of the event's 3 elements, but it costs PRA money, and the city will need to support it or not. And it's that simple. Discounts for seniors, police, firemen, and veterans. These cost PRA money, and the COA, the city, will need to decide to support it or not. It's that simple. Replacing umbrellas and purchasing the latest in swim lesson supplies. Providing the weekly newsletter, organizing the volunteer days, promoting staff commitment through a set of programs. These all cost money and time, and the city will need to decide whether to support it or not. The city will need to make the determination that this pool is important 100%, or it will fail. On our end, PRA has provided our perspective on the nuances and importance of these and other items to the administration. We provided our books and costs and have clearly demonstrated and proven the financial success of our pool. Our staff, along with Mr. King and Mr. Crawford, have had numerous meetings over the last 7 months discussing the why and how of what we do. Through these discussions, we have come to realize that our pool is a true community service obligation. that following the necessary constraints, but setting our own course and staying true to our mission has made our pool continue its upward and outward trajectory. We have recognized a few improvements that will continue and occur because of this turnover. One is a centralized online registration system that will benefit all the parks programs as a whole, and they will promote communication with all participants. The city also has the opportunity to build new aquatic programming and options utilizing Mr. Crawford's insight and experience in human health rehabilitation, water therapy, and physical fitness. These were areas that were outside of PRA's purview of expertise, but will certainly strengthen the pool and expand its purpose. Our model is not typical of any other pool. Our methods are homegrown, and our focus is on common sense and community service. It's a platform for scholarships, job training, and relative life skills. It's more than 129,000 gallons of water. It's more than a recreation facility, and it's more than just a community asset. This is what makes Pataskala different. This is one of the assets that makes our community great. There is no class or continuing education that will teach the idea of community or even this pool operation model. The pool and parks, for that matter, are not as clear or as visible as paved streets or tidy lots. But I believe that with Mr. Crawford, Mr. King, and the support of this council, it will continue to serve this community and be a central positive beacon for years to come. Thank you. Any questions?
Well, I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. That's, as you alluded to, I can remember, because I was sitting out there when there was first discussion about we should probably just fill it in with dirt and say goodbye. So we all jumped on the bandwagon, and of course you guys have done a wonderful job with the parks and the soccer program, which Lanier is now and then the city has taken back, and I guess you're telling us that PRA is giving the pool back to the city pretty much. So Mr. Chapman, you've been a big chunk of that, and I can remember many kids. Well, I don't know how you conned those kids into scrubbing that pool on those cold days in May, but you did it. And I've seen a lot of service hours down there, and a lot of community. The 5Ks and the swim meets and the mini triathlons, everything that's happened down there is a big part of the city and a big part of this community. So I'm just going to say thank you for what you've done. So anybody else have any other comments or anything they'd like to add?
I do. I mirror what Mayor said. Having all three of my kids learn to swim in that pool, that is like a pinnacle, like that's just like I don't even know if there's words for it. As a teacher in the community, I go down there and there are just hundreds and hundreds of kids, and including my own, that absolutely love being inside those fences. What you guys have done, Jeff, the time that you have given, all of your, I'm going to just speak to, Ann, I commend you and your family, but I'm going to speak to Jeff for a second. The hours that your family has given, the dedication and the sacrifice that you have given are amazing. Like, I don't even know if people know, like, he is there at 6:45, 6:30 in the morning, every morning, opening that up, cleaning that, so that people like myself can swim laps. Then the high school cross-country team meets there. Then the swim team gets there at 8. Like, he's literally there from sunrise until sunset. All of his kids are working in there. His family is devoted every minute to that success of that pool. So I know that you have another journey that you're going on. You have a new adventure with your family, and you're moving out of this community, and we will miss you. And a huge thank you for what you've given to our community. So thank you very much.
Mr. Powell?
Just the same thing. That's been the pool's meant a lot to my family. I know. Spend hot summer days there, and my son, he doesn't have like a lot of things he's really good at. But this year he started swim team. Sorry. And I watched him improve every single meet and just beam with pride. And as a dad, there's no way to quantify that. And so I see what you guys have facilitated for my son, and words fall short of the gratitude that I have for you guys. So thank you.
Any other comments?
I have one more thing.
Yes.
I have, after having watched Lanier do what he's done for the city in such a short amount of time, what a blessing to know that you are handing such a piece of your heart over to someone that has an absolutely amazing talent and love for the city. So I have absolutely no fear like in this. And so I love how Lanier has jumped in. And so that must make you feel more calm to know that someone that is invested in our city and that loves our community just as much as you do is going to take your pride and joy over. So, yay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd have to echo that too, knowing that Lanier has that small town charm feel. He knows what we want, he gets it. It's already been shown in the parks and all the programs that he's instilled, so it's obviously going to continue with the pool, so yeah, that is a good feeling. So, anything else from anybody? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I certainly can't top that, but I want to say thanks to both of you. Grew up down there as a kid, and seeing it come back to what it was when I was younger is awesome. But I'll leave it short and sweet. Just thank you, and again, I think I echo what Mrs. Hayes says. I'm sure Lanier will pick up right where you guys left off. So that's it.
And of course, Ann and Andy, we're going to see you around, and you're going to stay here. But Mr. Chapman, thank you very much. Now we have a proclamation. I'm just going to read this. It's obviously for you, and also, what's the young lady's name? Denise Brooks. That always helps us out with this. Okay. Whereas it's one of the responsibilities and privileges of the mayor of the city of Pataskala, Ohio, to recognize events of outstanding worthiness. It is with great pride that the city of Pataskala, in conjunction with the Licking County Soil and Water Conservation District, welcomes the 25th annual Licking County River Roundup on September 7th, 2019, where citizens come together to participate in a hands-on cleanup of our Licking County waterways. And in collaboration with the Licking County River Roundup event, the city of Pataskala encourages everyone in the community, from families and organizations to public officials and senior citizens, to work together to help keep our waterways clean and preserve our natural resources. So therefore, I, Michael W. Compton, Mayor of the city of Pataskala, Ohio, do hereby proclaim the 7th day of September 2019 as Licking County River Roundup Day in the city of Pataskala. I'll give this to Alan. Alan, could you give us a little insight on what we're going to be doing this year for the River Roundup?
We're going to run the same route that we did last year, which is we'll start at the North End of Foundation Parks where we'll meet. I will walk down.
Photo op. Very nice, thank you. And we're going to get a couple of, I think we're going to try to get Dairy Hut to give us some free food for our volunteers, so there's a good incentive, and also Brown Sign Company is going to make us some banners, so we're trying to get the community involved. How will you do that as far as sign-ups and waivers and all that good stuff?
Those are all on Eventbrite. You can find that through the Licking County Soil and Waters webpage to sign up for that. Again, we'll meet at the north end of Foundation Park. We'll work our way south down the south of the Licking River and end right there pretty much at Dairy Hut, cleaning the river and going back up and picking up trash bags at the end and just trying to clean the river.
Very good. All right, thank you. Okay, let's see. Any more citizens' comments? Anybody wish to speak tonight? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Judy Baird,
Yep.
12705 Cable Road, Pataskala. I love a parade. When I had businesses in Pataskla, I always anticipated and participated in the parade. I've helped make my share of floats, and I remember it as being such a fun time with fellow business associates, also with my children who look forward to decorating their bicycles and riding in the parade, or riding on the church float or the daycare center float or the real estate float. These were special times for me and my family. Valuable bonding times, not only with our family, but also with our co-workers. And I am so grateful to the Street Fair Parade for these memories that we have and for our pictures. There was a time when you used to receive a small plaque from the Firefighter Association just for participating in the parade, and businesses would put those on the wall so they'd be quite visible to anybody walking in so that you would know that they participated in the parade. Plus, the Standard and the Post like to print pictures of the parade. I have a 2008, 10 years ago, almost 11, Pataskla Post. Big pictures of the parade, and Suzanne will like this, the Hayes family up in this corner being in the parade. Everybody likes to be in the parade. I also have coverage from the Post for 2018. Didn't get quite as many pictures, but the parade marches on. This is very important to our community. Personally, what I like most about the parade now is the experience of staging it. There is a sense of comradeship among people who participate in the parade. Since Rotary became involved in the organizing of the parade in 1999, I've helped with staging these parade entries about 20 years. And I can tell you that there is great camaraderie among the people who participate, whether they be local or political politicians, judges, business owners, churches, 25-year class, 50-year class, kings, queens. Everybody has fun back there while they're waiting. People share decorations, scissors, tape, ideas, and they chew the fat. Great time back there. Plus, Watkins and Licking Heights teams, cheerleaders, and bands wait next to each other in Foundation Park. This is not a problem. What makes this so unique is that the kids and the adults know each other. We're all from the same community. And by the way, the tradition of alternating which school goes first in the parade continues, and this year it will be Watkins. So what happens in Foundation Park the hour before the parade starts? Friendships are made or strengthened. The sense of community is at its highest. Memories are made. Lots of pictures are taken. And I am so happy to still be a part of these valuable memories. Which leads me to the reason I am attending this council meeting and speaking to you. I am personally inviting each of you important council members to participate in the 2019 Street Fair Parade. It's summertime fun. You can ride in a vehicle with your spouse, your children, your grandchildren, your grandparents, your pet, whatever, or you can walk. Wave to the crowd, wave to your neighbors, wave to the folks from the Oaks Care Center who are always in front of the funeral home. Wave to your voters, wave to your friends, wave to strangers who might live in your ward. Sure, you can also give candy to the children, and I'd suggest give some to the adults, but don't throw it. Make your own memories, take your own pictures, engage your family in this once-a-year experience for the community and for your family. So, in order to enjoy this once-in-a-year community-wide opportunity, I urge you to fill out the bottom portion of the empty form and return that to Rotary, or I can pick it up from Jessica. I'm going to give each of you a parade entry. I'm going to give you a copy of the parade route, and on the back are a list of all the grand marshals since 1999 and a list of the parade themes. So I'll hand those out now, and are there any questions?
Thank
You know
you,
my
Mrs.
purpose.
Baird.
If we decide to do it, Mrs. Baird, do we have to find the driver, the ride, or is that provided by?
That's up to you. If you want to walk, if you want to drive your own car, or have a neighbor drive you, it's all up to you.
I'll look silly driving my van, but I maybe find a
You drive
convertible
your,
or something.
drive your golf cart. Thank you for the time. I will pass these out.
I'll drive you, Mr. Hicken. It'll be an experience you won't forget.
I have a three-wheel bike.
I'll give you the,
I do. Big old basket on the back. I have pedaled that in the parade before.
Can he switch my nameplates again?
no.
Mr. Hitchens is down.
Mr. Hitchens is down there. He switched my
Yeah,
nameplate.
what a tough crowd.
I'm in trouble.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mrs. Baird. We'll see you there. All right. Any other citizens' comments?
Hi, Lee Guttentag, 280 Charles Road. This will be the easiest time you guys have to hear me speak, I promise. I know I'm not supposed to ask questions, but I'm putting 2 requests out because I don't know who else to do it to, probably to Scott. Number 1, assuming that the use permit is requested by the Bullet Ranch and it goes to the Board of the Zoning, I do not believe we have to be informed because of how far we are, and I ask that we are. And number 2, I don't know if there's flexibility. I got 2 pretty big business trips in the autumn. I'm kind of hoping we can kind of work around that since I've been heading this for the last couple months, and that's my only 2 requests. I told you it'd be pretty painless.
Mr. Washington?
Mike Washington, 80 Oak Meadow, Do It Best Hardware and Napa Auto Parts. I stood before you, time flies, 6, 7, 8 months ago to talk about the condition of the properties in Pataskala and how we need some type of ordinance or something that we can enforce to make sure our buildings don't go into decay. You know, we talk about bright and shiny and always want to bring things new into town, but we need to take care of what we've got in town. And I know it sounds self-serving because I'm sitting up here talking about it, but as a community, we need people to talk about those type of things. We need to put some teeth and do something about our lack of ability to enforce problems that are in this community because it makes all of us look bad. You bring people into this town to show them what we can do, add, grow, do things. Well, they go all over the town looking at what the town has to offer, and then you go by our area and it's neglect. And something needs to be done about it. And it's only going to get worse. From what I understand, the tenant's going to be moving down 310, and I don't blame them. They deserve nicer property to be in. But if we think it's bad now, when that owner has no money coming in, he's going to spend even less on that piece of property. And they talk about tearing it down. Well, that's just hearsay. It costs money to tear stuff down. It costs real money. So, you know, what are we going to do about making sure that that piece of property and any other property in this town doesn't fall into that same state? I was on an alarm call a couple weeks ago, and the police officer met me at the building right back there, and correct me if I'm wrong, he had said that he had gone on top of that building to somehow chase a suspect, look for a suspect, and if I'm wrong, he said he got off that building because it felt unsafe. And I told you last time I was here, I had a roofer get up on that building 3 years ago, said the same thing. Fire department doesn't seem to be able to enforce any type of problem. I called them. You can visibly see ceiling tile falling down, mold on the ground. If they come into my building and I've got ceiling tiles missing, I have to replace them. I get it written up. But yet a building that is visible doesn't have to be enforced for those same safety standards. Doesn't make sense. So I don't know where to go to try to make it better, but I'm going to keep coming back until we do something as a community to make sure we do those things so that as a community we are a proud Pataskala. Circleville, small town, just enacted zoning, property and building type things that I'm talking about right now. So it can be done. And I know it's expensive and hard to upkeep, but did we not a few years ago upgrade our signage so that we're competitive with the Granvilles and the New Albany's? And we enforce those new zoning regulations and types of styles and so forth. Well, we need to be doing the same thing across the gamut of what we as Pataskala offer to our citizens. So I've got Dick Gray here with me tonight, who's a great tenant, who's very Goodwill has been very good to this community as along the whole Licking Knox area. He can attest, he's in the real estate business, he knows what it's like when you have a decaying property next to other properties, how it just continues to slide down and all over. So we've got to do something about it. So I'll end with that. I just, would like to see that we can eventually get something done to prevent this type of stuff from happening in any part of Pataskala.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if it's council's pleasure, I'd like to make one comment, if that's okay.
Okay.
Mr. Washington, thank you for bringing that up, and I would just like to encourage you to stick around for the rest of the meeting. I've talked to BJ, and I was gonna maybe bring up a solution to council, how we could, if everybody agrees, kind of head down that path to start that discussion. Very good point, so I'll leave it at that for now.
Anybody else wish to speak tonight?
Right here. My name is Richard Gray. I'm the Vice President of Retail for Licking Knox Goodwill. Corporate address would be 65 South 5th Street in Newark, Ohio. I'm here today unsolicited from Mike. I actually had some conversation with Mike several times over the year concerning the dilapidated property that's next to us. We are a tenant of the Wishart Brothers, and I don't know how many of you were around when the grocery store left it and just left the situation, but they've been a much better landlord than what we were dealing with before. It was an absentee landlord from Cincinnati, I believe, and they treated it that way. About 2 years ago, when we were in discussions with Mike about renegotiating a lease that was coming due, the conversation actually came up about this property next door. I had my CEO and my CFO come with me, and we toured the area, and it was like going through a minefield or a moon crater field driving across the other lot. And unfortunately, the perception for a lot of folks is that's all the same shopping center. And it does not help us a great deal with what we're being presented with. At that time, we even made an attempt to talk to the owner, not necessarily to buy, but to open up some conversation and see if that was a possibility. Because lately, that's what we've been doing, is buying our own properties and securing our own future. Mike was even okay with that. If we would have bought it and fixed up the property, it would increase the value, and he would be able to take the spot that we had and enter it to a better lease. So I'm very concerned about what's going on. I did stop at Rusty's to have dinner before I came here, just to verify, and then yes, they are leaving the end of September, the 1st October is when they're going to be moving, so it's just going to continue to go downhill. I'm not sure why the gentleman would even return our call. I didn't want to enter any conversation on it. I just don't understand that. But it's a bad situation, and I just expect my displeasure on what's going on with it. Any questions? Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak? All right, introduction, discussion, and approval of consent agenda matters.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Barstow, seconded by Mr. Powell. Discussion and roll.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow.
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Chicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Okay, consent agenda passes. On to reports. I know there'll probably be some discussion from just about everybody, but as I mentioned in my prayer, the Oaks escapade was while it could have been something that was terrible, I was blown away by the response from the community, first responders. The Church of the Nazarene is just happens to be a perfect place for a disaster. They completely cleaned out their sanctuary, and we had beds in there, and it was nice and cool, and tons of food showed up, and it became a mobile place to command on what was happening, and we got all the residents, I think, by 7 or 8 o'clock to, which is the only downfall, I guess, is those folks getting scattered to the wind to 7 or 8 other facilities, but at least by the end of the day, they were in some place that was safe and comfortable, and hopefully we can get them back to what they call home. So that was an exciting beginning of that week. And of course, I know the city jumped in and along with lots of the residents and our food places. There was tons of food, and of course the church. So well done, City of Pataskala. Pelotonia, I don't think we had any issues there. Enjoyed working with Mr. McClellan at our usual intersection. Didn't have too many issues. I know you guys had a few issues at our major Broad and Summit intersection, where that's where we usually have the most cars and backup of traffic. But 7,400 bikers ended up going through town, and it was a great day. Fair's coming up, and if you'll jot this number down, BJ especially, 740-564-9713 is the hotline directly to the West Licking Firefighter Association president and street committee chairman, who will answer any question. Jess will have that number, BJ will have that number, I'll have that number. You guys can have it if somebody calls. And we've decided as an organization to keep that number 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, so that when people do have any questions regarding the street fair, we can answer them. Mr. Barstow, what do you got?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to echo the Oaks situation. That was really hit home for me. Many of you know my mom was in a nursing home through April when she passed, but anyway, those folks, there's no margin for error, and so the city was right to act very quickly, and I appreciate BJ taking the lead on that. I think we were on the phone, I think, talking about something else when things started to happen.
That's right.
And so to the citizens, I saw Mr. George from the paper was taking photographs. I saw a couple of my neighbors, one of them who's a fireman, EMT in another district that happens to live here in the area. I know him and his dad and his mom for many, many years, and his mom, who is in the healthcare industry, volunteered their time to help folks out. And people in the community, this is maybe most important, who are not necessarily healthcare workers or nurses or things like that, just went down to the church to sit with folks, because I know from personal experience and personal observation, there's a lot of folks at the Oaks and lots of folks in nursing homes where they're in a situation where they have no one to come and see them, and so somebody just go and sit with them and try to comfort them. I thought that was really awesome. That speaks very highly to our community, and we had the discussion of the pool earlier this evening, the kind of people that are here in town, so it makes me very, very happy and very, very proud to live in a town like Pataskala. Now to something not so fun. To the gentleman who came and spoke about the buildings. I have to tell you guys, I've been on council for a number of years. When you say the word property maintenance code, now I've said it, that brings out, anytime that discussion comes up at council, that brings out hordes of people who are virulently and violently opposed to any effort to regulate any portion of anything they do on their property. So, if you gentlemen are serious about having council consider property maintenance code, you'll need to mobilize folks who support it, because I will tell you, when that comes up, that's what will happen. This room will be packed with folks who are, again, violently and virulently, absolutely opposed to any attempt to regulate anything they do on their property. So they live here, they vote, so that's what will happen. So, business owners and other residents who may be in favor of a property maintenance code, you'll need to mobilize your resources, otherwise you'll just be drowned out by those folks. So that's my 2 cents on property maintenance code.
You think there could be a difference, though, between residential and commercial?
There are people in this town who are violently and virulently opposed to any effort to regulate anything that they do on their property.
Point that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr.
Thank you for that
Zatz?
lead-in.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I have nothing, thank you, Mayor.
Mr. King?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the street fair hotline number. Speaking of the street fair, Jess sent out the sign-up sheet to council. I will have her send it around again with an updated one so we can see what holes still exist. Second thing is the Burlington County ED 411 I sent out today. Unfortunately, that is the first night of the street fair, so I am going to attend ED 411 that night to represent the city. The Oaks assessment letters, as I mentioned to council in an email last week, we had received 9, we've since received a 10th, so we have 3 still outstanding that we have not received a certified green card back for. I can send out to council tomorrow my list of when they were signed for and when the 14-day period expires for those that we have received, so you guys are aware of that as well. I've not received any objections to date. Keep council apprised.
Have we used the postal service to track and see if it's been delivered, or if it's coming back, or if it's just sitting at the post office?
I have not checked on that, but we will.
Okay, you can do that on the post office website. You can use your tracking number. And just FYI, if sometimes the green card doesn't come back, I know the court system will accept the proof that you print out from the postal service that it was delivered to someone. Sometimes the green card just doesn't come back.
Okay. We'll check on that. Mr. Zed's talking to him as well. You know, if it comes back undeliverable or whatever, if they don't sign for it, we'll just send it regular mail and that will suffice.
Okay.
As well, we did have 2 come back that the post office did not put the date of when they were signed for, so we had to call over and get those
Okay.
from them. So, but we are currently tracking all of those. Main Street easements, you saw we got our final easement for the Ivory Barn, so we're AEP is scheduled to begin that project first week of September. I'm drafting a letter to get it out to everybody on Main Street, looking about 90 days to complete that project once they're in there. So
Is the pole on Chet's going or staying?
still working on that with CenturyLink. They're looking at what their options are as far as getting service across the streets of that one property.
Affectionately called the ugliest pole on the street.
That is that one, yes.
Yeah.
That's not an easement issue, that's just.
That is not an easement, it's
just a
not
service
an,
issue.
it's a service, it's not an AEP pole, AEP is co-located on it, so they'll be removing theirs, it's a CenturyLink pole, and the service is going to one property on the west side of 310, so working with them to see how else they can service that one property to get it out of there. Next thing I have is the comprehensive plan, working with Scott, and he's been working with the steering committee to get comments back from them. The plan is to the point where we feel comfortable presenting it to council through OHM doing that. As Kathy pointed out last council meeting, the steering committee has to make their final report back to council. OHM providing that to council could serve as that as long as there is a steering committee member present, it would serve as that. My question is to council, what is the desire of council as far as how to hold that? Do you want to do it as a special meeting, focus just on the comp plan, or do we want to do it at the beginning of a regular meeting coming up?
I just do the beginning of a regular meeting and try to find one that's not, where we don't have a whole bunch of resolutions or meeting discussions or an executive session or something like that.
What we could do is build an agenda as such, and you know, if there's stuff we could wait for another meeting or whatever, and have that be the main topic. So we'll get a date together with OHM and work with the steering committee as well, and get it scheduled for one of our upcoming regular
Mr.
meetings.
Hicken?
My question, Mr. King, is do you anticipate action happening at the same time?
No.
Okay. This is just a report back to them from us?
Just a report back to them, and then council at that point could send it to the development committee if they wanted to for consideration, or could take time to ask questions. And, you know, I don't want it to be presented to council that night and seek action for adoption that night. That's just unfair.
Well, that would have probably driven my vote. That, to me, sounds more like a workshop type situation than just before a meeting. So if there was gonna be a bunch of give and take, or, you know, just a straight, I don't know, there's been a couple of those that I've seen, and I'm sure that they, I don't know, we can ask Scott, but Mr. Fulton, but you know, I think that it's possible that presentation may be kind of lengthy. If we can get it in and not stretch a meeting too far, but by the same token, to focus on that one night, if council can make it, everybody can make it, I'm also in favor, so.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, we did the charter review as part of a regular meeting, did we not? Mr. Walther, is that, you were the chair.
I've been on them twice, and yes,
Okay.
we did. You're exactly right. We
And
did.
charter review's not maybe as adept as the comprehensive plan, but it's quite a bit of stuff to go through, so I'm just,
I mean,
I think we could do it on a regular council meeting night, since council members already have those scheduled as well. Sometimes it can be tough to find, dates that it can work, and like I said, we can just build the council meeting agenda around that, keep them.
keep it light on the subcommittees.
Yeah, subcommittees and legislation, we could keep it light on.
Mr. Walter?
The only thing I would ask is, can we get this ahead of time?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be my main thing, is I appreciate the audit, and I would have, appreciated maybe seeing that beforehand. Obviously, this would be something I'd like to at least have, at least a week, if not two, prior to that meeting. I think it'd be a whole lot more productive.
I agree, instead of just saying here and then,
Yeah.
here's the
It-
report,
right.
let's talk about it again in 2 weeks or
Yes,
something.
please.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
Gotta absorb it a little bit before you start talking about it.
Yep.
Right.
Last thing I have, I wanna mention impact fees. At the last development committee, we talked about impact fees, had a presentation from Jim Leonard representing Burton Consulting. Jim had presented to me a fee of $9,800 to do it. It was light on attending committee meetings and council meetings. Came back, I asked him to give me a new proposal with attending 3 of each of those. New proposal came back at 13,000 and some change. We certainly could present that to council for seeking authorization to do that, but with it reaching that point, I almost feel like we should probably go through an RFQ process to see what others could provide to us, and then come to council seeking authorization for a contract.
And I'm not sure whether the development committee made a recommendation to come to council with that or not, at that point.
And it's not on,
Yeah, I was just saying that maybe that's I would think maybe the development
Go
committee
back
should
to it.
explore that a little bit
Okay.
further. Cause I think there were questions, and Mike, I don't mean to speak for you, but I think there were still open questions to be answered before I felt really comfortable sending it to council.
Yeah, me too.
That's my opinion.
we have scheduled for a development committee then, and I'll work with Mike to get that scheduled. And that is all I have. Happy to answer any questions. Last thing, we'll do our executive session upstairs this evening.
Anything for BJ? Mr. Nicholson?
Thank you, Mayor. We are in the midst of working on the 2020 budget. Capital items are being worked on now, and the budget models have all been distributed to the departments. So we're on track to meet the deadlines. On the agenda tonight is a resolution requesting authorization to lease a copier for the utility department. When they were in this building, if they had color copy needs or fax needs, whatever, high print volume jobs, they'd send it upstairs to the administration copier. But since they're moving out to a new building all by themselves, clearly that's not practical anymore. So that we're requesting that we at least have a copier.
Lease to buy?
No, we do 4-year operating leases, so that at the end of the 4, we do a swap.
Get a new copier. Gotcha. Okay. Anything else? Mr. Nicholson? Anything
No, that's
else?
all I have.
Okay, yes.
I read through the proposal. I think it said $209 a month. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then is there an option to buy at the end of that 4-year term? I couldn't tell if that was.
No, we buy straight up, do operating leases with copiers. Nature of copiers is by the time you get to the end of the 4 years, a lot of times they're ridden pretty hard, and the maintenance really starts going up. So that's the last time you want to really take on ownership of a copier is when it's 5 or 6 years old.
But also conversely, if it's not ridden really hard and maintained well, I'm just pointing out the other side of it is that
No,
if it has few copies or numbers or whatever, 4 years down the line is still making good copies, would we want that option to buy it for a pretty cheap price? Cause I can imagine the owner of that said lease would not want it back.
State contract is a lease. It's not a lease to own, so.
Very good.
You use the copier a lot?
I do use copier quite a bit. More than I anticipated.
They also do like the monthly bill report, which is a fairly lengthy report. She always sends that job upstairs, I think.
All right, anything else for BJ? Yes.
Actually, this is from Mr. Nicholson
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
the chair of the budget committee, which I think is Mr. Harston.
Finance committee.
Finance, what I call budget. Yeah, I don't know what's
It's
up
like
with
that,
that.
this and
Well,
This and
I-
there and
yeah,
remember
this and
this.
that, yes, tonight. So my question is, do we have the first budget meeting set?
Yeah.
And could you remind us of what date that is?
September 30th is what we scheduled it for.
Is that right?
30th?
30th. Thank you. Welcome. You gonna be in Europe then, Mr. Higgins?
No, sir, I will not. I will be here in the fabulous city of
I was
Penn.
curious, just thought I'd ask.
Anything else for Jamie? Chris, what do you got for me?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple highlights from the report. We had at the wastewater plant, the oxidation ditch has a coupler that failed on us. We had a company come in to look at that coupler. The ironwork underneath where the coupler mounts had gone out and caused the coupler to fail. It also caused the bearing to fail. Turned out to be a bigger project than we anticipated. It took them 3 days to get the job done. Thought it was going to be about a half a day job. So I'm waiting to see what the invoice is going to be, but it could be higher than we originally thought. With the drive being down, our DOs went lower than they normally are, dissolved oxygens, so the ammonias went up. So we were in contact with our EPA rep the whole time, letting them know this is what's happening, we're in the repair process, and they were okay with that, but there are going to be a couple days where our ammonia level was higher than what we wanted it to be at. So not a violation, but a letter of non-compliance will have to go out. Just let them know, explain what happened. This is a piece that is going to be replaced by the WRF upgrade, which is a little disappointing that we have to spend any money on it right before we get rid of it, 8 months before we get rid of it, as part of the jet aeration system, but something we had to do. The lead and copper program is completed. All of our samples come in. The copper is consistently low. We have non-detectable levels of lead year after year. So this year we're going to fill out an application to ask the EPA to change our requirements from every year to every 3 years. It's something that has been done in the past and has been rejected. I'm not sure how successful it'll be, but it's something I'm going to try anyway, just to see if we can sample those less, since our numbers are always non-detectable or extremely low. The department did have a service line leak. 279 Isaac Tharp had a pin-sized hole develop in the copper service line, which happens a lot while we switch to polylines. We replaced the service line from the court stop to the curb stop with a new polyline, and they're back in business. The department is going to offer paying for a hepatitis A vaccine, which is something that is common in the wastewater industry. Fecal oral contamination is a easy way to get hepatitis A, and so our industry puts us at a higher risk than most for accidental contamination. To this point, the city has not offered that in the past. It is something you can get through your insurance, but you'll have to take a hit on your deductible. So talked with CVS, they offer it right down the road, so we'll all meet and go there. It's a voluntary program. Not everybody has to sign up for it if they don't want to do it, but we did have 5 employees that want to go get this vaccine done. Once you do it once, you're good for life. You don't need a booster or anything else like that. The final thing I wanted to hit on, I don't want to take anything away from Mr. Hickens' utility committee report, but the EPA issued a draft permit for our wastewater plant, the discharge permit. In that permit was some language explaining that we had to do certain steps with our I&I program. It seemed to be very strict, unreasonably so. So there's a comment period of 30 days where you can go back and forth with the EPA and say, I think this is more reasonable, this is something that we could probably afford or can't afford or whatever. But we got the permit, the comment period gave us a deadline of tonight. So that happened because the EPA, they said they sent it out on July 3rd. We never received it. So I reached out to them July 11th, wondering where it was at, and that's the first time I got a copy of it. So going through the process of trying to go over the whole document, it's like 47 pages, I think, something like that. Going through the whole document, looking at all the parameters, making sure we're good with them. Didn't feel like we were going to have time to respond, so I reached out, tried to get a extension on that. It was a little bit of back and forth, but we finally got granted an extension of 30 days. So August 30th is when the comment period has to be submitted. The response that the EPA gave us for why we didn't receive the draft was that they believe they mailed it to mayor and council instead of mailing it to the director's office or utility department or anything like that. So in response to that, it was suggested that if They mailed it to mayor and council. Perhaps a response should come with approval from mayor and council, and so look at maybe next meeting having a final copy of our comments presented to council for recommendation. So outside of that, I have nothing else. Be happy to answer any questions.
Yes.
Chris, I got the Licking County Health Department brochure. They appear to offer for some people free hepatitis A vaccines. Maybe you ought to.
I will look into that. I did see that. I think a lot of it was food service, but I didn't even think to reach out to them. I should. I will do that this week.
Right. Well, yeah, they list some. It says people who are at risk.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll definitely reach out to them.
Okay.
Anything else for Chris? All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Haynes?
Thank you, Mayor. Two resolutions on the agenda for tonight. The first one's 058. That's for acceptance of the Hazelwood 6.1 subdivision infrastructure improvements. They have checked all the boxes, done all the necessary requirements for Hazelwood 6.1. A little side note on that one, the developer was very persistent and adamant in trying to get us to accept section 5.2, which is not ready. Probably will be by the next meeting, but we refused to put that on the agenda for tonight because it was not everything was complete. Next one is 060. That is the Taylor Road Drainage Project. That is where we have flooding at Taylor Road and Berry Road. This one I originally scoped at around a $15,000 design project. As I've worked with other engineers, we found that it wasn't going to be quite as simple as what I'd hoped. We are planning to stay within the right-of-way, but there's a gas line and a water line on one side and sanitary sewer on the other that we have to work around. So when I originally scoped it for $15,000 in the budget, it came back a little bit more than double that with the original engineer. So we went and got two other proposals, and American Structure Point came in at $32,000, so a little bit more than double. But we do have savings in the existing budget under engineering outside scope to cover that. So that we'd like to see that go through so we can get moving and get that drainage problem resolved. Other projects, the Safe Travel Plan Phase 1 and 2, so at the western intersection of Broad Street and Main Street. The guardrail has started, and they will be continuing to work on that project here over the next couple months. The Streets program has also begun. The curb work you may have seen on Mill Street and down by the pool, and also some curb work on Headley's Mill, where we have some hills coming down there. And that will they'll start the repair work on a few of our roads this week and next week, and work on that to probably about the next month and a half. We'll be working on those projects. And then the Oak Meadow Drive project, Rock River mobilized and began work on Pat Haven Drive today. Of course, they'll be working downstream to upstream, so up Pat Haven, down Hickory, and then up Oak Meadow with the drainage, and then obviously come back for restoration and paving. Aside from that, Licking County Health Department, talked to them here recently. We had done, or they had done, septic system inspections here a couple years back over on Helen Drive and Christie Lee Drive. One of their other target areas in the city was Woodside Drive, so they will be starting that, working with people over on Woodside Drive to make sure all the septic systems are in compliance there. There is an assistance program for people who need assistance through the Licking County Health Department as a note on that one. And the last thing, I've started putting in my report, at the end of my report, just how many phone calls and emails resident-wise that I get. Over the past 3 weeks, I've got about 40. A lot of those are fairly easy, but a number of them take a good amount of time. So I've been a little bit overwhelmed, and between projects and dealing with resident issues, I haven't been able to get to a whole lot else. So just wanted to throw that out there. A lot of little drainage projects and that sort of thing, but working through them, just taking a fair amount of time. Happy to answer any questions.
Yes.
I've got a couple questions. First of all, thank you very much. I know I harp all the time about bidding out work, and I appreciate you going that effort to get the bids for the Taylor stormwater. I'm gonna probably channel a little Mel Carter here. Over there on Taylor Road Path, there's still some mowing that's not happening. It's in the areas where they netted some of the erosion prone areas, thinking that netting can probably come off and then we can mow there. But I didn't. I mean, I'm going by it to find out what we can and can't do. I wanted to ask that you look at that when you get a moment.
So on that.
Some of it's in front of our park, and some, of, you know, not just the residential area.
ODOT had just created the punch list here not too long ago, so the contractor should be out there, and that is on the punch list for sure.
For removing it,
Certain.
for removing the netting?
Removing, the erosion protection, yes.
Okay, and then our park, the park mowing can figure out, go ahead and mow that.
It should be, I don't have the schedule yet, I actually just, left a message or sent an email to, the project manager with ODOT about that, and haven't heard back from him yet on what kind of schedule we're looking at.
Okay. We got one more for.
Sure.
So a while ago, this was a while ago, when I was on some of the street committee stuff, we talked about parking downtown, and I know, I've brought this up maybe a couple more times in this period, but I don't know if there's any more discussion about the parking issues and the apartments that use the on-street parking. Just wanna throw that back out there again to see if we can get resolution to that. I know it's kind of a difficult question, and probably doesn't have very good solutions, but would be something that I'd throw back out there again for either the street committee to look at and your attention to.
Fair enough.
That's all I got.
My question's both for Mr. Haynes and or Mr. King. Are we gonna let the citizens on Woodside Drive know that, that's happening? It seems like part of the big problem last time was, it was sprung, might be the wrong word, but there was a sudden, the health department sent them a letter that said, you have to do this, and it was kind of official looking, and it was, you know, in the end, there was no softening of the blow, there was no explanation that went with it. And we then, at that time, we held a public meeting, we got the health department to back off a little bit and change some of its procedures, which was fine with the health department, and I think we did a good job facilitating that, even though we're talking about septic tanks, which we have absolutely no jurisdiction over whatsoever. But I wanted to know if, do we typically let those people know that this might be coming as a city?
We have not in the past, it's been the health department that has provided notification.
And that's Chad's office?
It is Chad's office.
Could we at the very least reach out and say, hey,
Absolutely.
you're gonna send these people,
I'll reach out to Chad tomorrow and see what addresses and stuff, how many, all that stuff.
I appreciate that.
That happened with the Helen and Christie Lee, and I think it went rather well. They sent them a letter or a postcard or something
They did.
beforehand.
They provided advance notifications, so people let them know when they'd be there and what to expect.
So whatever they did last time.
So people aren't traipsing through their lawns and whatever it is.
Right. Go back to my earlier comments, but,
I will get with Chad to see what notification they do, all that, so.
we didn't hear peep, no, no, it was fine. Okay.
And actually, I don't think they had any problems with any of the septics they inspected.
No.
I think they even came and told us, out of all the houses, which ones they'd given, some advice to or assistance to, so.
I'll check.
Okay,
Thank you.
anything else for Alan? You have a small, sinkhole developing at the entrance to Saddle Path and Havens Corners. And I wanna thank you personally for your help, and BJ's help and Jason Fravel's help as we work on some of these drainage issues. Mr. Carr specifically, thank you very much.
Hey, Mayor, real quick, where'd you say that sinkhole was?
At Saddle Path and Havens Corner.
Thank you.
And I have a request, I know it's fair time, and I would love to, if it happens, it happens. But I would love to see, since I just got you a whole bunch of new flags from Rotary, I'd love to see Main Street have some new flags before the fair starts, if that's possible. I know Fair Week's busy, and you guys bring down the barricades and the orange fence and help us a lot with that, but I actually went through, as I was going through Reynoldsburg today, they put up new flags down that main stretch because they're bringing back the Tomato Festival. So it made me think of, and then when I drove through town today, some of ours are pretty raggedy, and Rotary, as I said before, will always, all you gotta do is say, hey, we need 50 more, we need 100 more, Rotary will have them to us in the blink of an eye. So I know that's an extra chore with the truck and the ladder truck and the bucket truck and all that stuff, but if that can happen, I would really appreciate that.
We will get it.
Scott, what do you got for me?
Thank you, Mayor. We have two motions on the agenda tonight. Both of these are for high grass and weed violations, so that the motion would then be approving the property lien for cost of the work plus $200. Ordinance 2019-4341, that's the Scenic View Estates. Staff would respectfully request that this remain tabled. We're still working through some of the issues with the septic or the sanitary lines on the project, so we're hoping that could remain tabled while we work through that. And finally, ordinance 2019-44 is for an amended discharge map. In my report, I included a copy of the map that shows the properties to be removed from the discharge zone highlighted in red. Aside from that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anything for Scott? Yes.
Thank you. The high grass and weeds, that's the assessment on the property.
That's
The
correct.
new code that we adopted. Kind of cracked the door there for me, so I'm gonna walk through it here. I couldn't agree more with Mr. Barstow's passionate comments about the property maintenance code. We tried it in the past, and it didn't go well, and I do believe, I wasn't on council at the time, but I remember it. In my opinion, as one of seven, I think that went too far, and is probably why there was so much resentment for it, and it ultimately didn't happen. And when I say go too far, again, in my opinion, I think that the agriculture part of that is what really got everyone wound up. Probably rightfully so. With that being said, not getting too far in the weeds, and I've talked to Mr. King about that, and I'll let him weigh in on his opinion of this, and I'd like to hear council's as well, but I am more than willing to jump into this, and I think that maybe buildings and grounds, us not having anything on our plate right now would be a place to start the discussion and work it up to council. I certainly realize there will be a full room, but I'm passionate enough about it because we need it. We owe it to our residents, we owe it to our business owners, and it needs done. There is places around here that are in the gateway to our city that are falling down, and it's ridiculous. With that being said, again, I don't wanna go down a rabbit hole, but I firmly believe in this, and I'm always one to try not to bring a problem without bringing a solution, or at least being part of the solution, and I'm willing to do that. And I know that it's going to create some animosity, but again, just want to state this. I know it'll probably be in the paper. I don't want to get people wound up. I envision it not going as far as agriculture. Again, that's me, one of seven. I think that if I had to start somewhere, it would be somewhere along the lines of our tall grass and weeds policy, something simple for residential and businesses, but that's just me. So I'll leave it at that and let Mr. King weigh in on it, if he'd like to, or anyone else. I'd love to hear feedback.
Comment, Mr. King?
Go ahead, let Andy.
I'm going to echo Tommy's sentiments, and Todd, you're absolutely right. There were pitchforks and all the other things that were here. But I think it also had to do with one size fits all type of approach that was taken, and I'm hopeful that there's a different approach taken in the one that's necessary. It is necessary, Tommy, absolutely, to make sure that for safety reasons and for aesthetic reasons in certain areas that there is a maintenance code. But it's not a one size fits all. And I think it's going to take some hard work to do it, and I hope Scott and the administration's up for it. But I think it can be done, and it'll make Tassel a better place. And I'm willing to be part of that also.
Yeah, as Mr. Washington stated. Okay, Mrs. Hayes, go ahead.
I agree. Living in downtown is gonna be completely different than where Tommy's living and where we all live in different parts of the city. I don't know whether other cities, around us, like Mr. Washington stated, have something already kind of mapped out that we can take a look at, that might kind of be the beginning of our brainstorming. Maybe there are cities we are a very unique city in the sense that we have so many parts that are agricultural, and yet we have this business district, and they really can't, like Mr. Walther said, all can't fall under the same category. So I look forward to working with you on buildings and grounds and with you, Scott, to come up with something, because I can tell you, being in the business district, it's interesting because, and like Mr. Washington stated, people assume that because a property is next to yours, that it is yours, and that's the reputation. That is not the reputation that I'm sure Mr. Washington wants. We have a property right next to our one of our properties in downtown, and I had just a lady walking last week, and she was walking her dog, and while my son was mowing, and he's 17, she assumed it was our property, and she started, I could see her over the mower, her yelling at my son to mow that lot. It is not our lot. We do not own it. For years we have done the mowing for this owner because we got tired of looking at it. But eventually you get to the point where you get frustrated because people aren't taking care of their own properties. So my 17-year-old handled himself beautifully, but I went back into the conversation and I had to address the lady and explain to her that it wasn't our property and someone else is responsible for taking care of it. And so as property owners, we all hope that our neighbors are going to, keep their grass trimmed and their properties from falling in. And when they don't, it actually creates tension between neighbors. So I'm sure that Mr. Washington gets very frustrated with being assumed that his property is also the same. So I'm looking forward to delving into this because it's overdue, and I hope that we can come up with a plan that speaks to the different areas of our community.
Yes.
Well, I didn't say I was opposed to it, I just said that's what's going to happen when the subject gets broached, even if it's in a limited way. My prediction is that the room will be filled with people who are really, really opposed to any regulation of their property. And I noticed this in 2017, I was campaigning. I went to every neighborhood in the city, except those that don't allow solicitation. I didn't go to those. But just walking around, I was walking down the street. I was over on the west side of town, and I thought something odd in a driveway, and it was a car sitting in somebody's driveway with a tree growing up around through it. That's how long the car had been sitting there, or shrubs or something. And then there was another junk car sitting in the driveway, and I thought it's in a nice area of town. It's a nice subdivision. The homes are it's one of the older ones on the west side, so this is a nice place. This just shouldn't be. But I'm not about my business. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about when I think about a property maintenance code. I'm thinking more along the lines of our platted subdivisions, our business district, places like that would probably be appropriate for code. And there are model codes. There are things we can look at that will help us in other cities. So it is good. As the gentleman pointed out, it is good for business. Business people who are thinking about coming here don't just go to the place they're thinking about buying. They drive around town and see what they can see. If they see a car sitting in a driveway with a nice subdivision with a tree growing through it, or shrubs or whatever it was, it's not happening. It's not happening. So, my 2 cents. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody else?
I will just say that I remember what Mr. Barstow was talking about. The hardest needle thread, I think all of us up here obviously have thought about this a little bit, right? If we've got this much to say about it, we've at least thought about it. The hardest needle for me to thread is one man's trash is another man's treasure. And as you move forward to spelling some things out, the hard questions that come with that. But I sit on that committee, so I will be unwilling to throw myself into it to see if there is a good common sense approach to implementing something that helps everybody in the city. So, that's where I stand.
I'd like to add, just, I think that with development committee taking on the design standards and, looking at square footages and stuff like that, so, which is a big task in its own, which is requiring, new builds and, new businesses and residents to be built to a certain standard. I feel like this works hand in hand with that. Obviously, it's not the same thing, but, we're going to require new people to live up to a standard, and I think that, you know, what we have here now should also reasonably emphasized. And again, I think the one size fits all is probably why it wasn't successful.
And clearly that does not work.
It doesn't work.
Does not work.
So-
Does not.
Mr.
So
King? You know, I think there is a good parameter in place, with our tall grass and weeds ordinance. That could be a good starting point. Others have said it, you know, the platted subdivisions, commercial properties, those sorts of things is where this could apply. One size fits all does not work. I was here during that time. I remember that, and it was not, I don't think it was a good approach to it for the uniqueness of the community and how diverse we are. We're made up of rural, agriculture, densely populated subdivisions. I've had an opportunity to talk to Mr. Washington a couple of times about this issue, and it is frustrating at times, to say we don't have really any tools that we can do anything about this. I don't like giving that answer, for this stuff. It's right on our main drag. It does not look good. Sounds like we have a committee that is, eager, willing to take this on, so I recommend that we proceed in that direction with the, Buildings and Grounds Committee taking this on. Not only, you know, Tommy mentioned that Development Committee, may begin looking at design standards, but they're also gonna potentially, do some work with the comprehensive plan if it's kicked back to them, plus impact fees. So their plate is gonna be pretty full as we move forward. So I think it's a good fit to go to Buildings and Grounds to, work on this project.
I think it's a move in the right direction. I share in Mr. Washington's frustration for 8 years. We've tried to reach out to this gentleman, and this one's kind of unique because I think most businesses in town take care of their properties. They want their business to look, you know, halfway decent. This guy just doesn't care. I mean, he won't even answer calls to see if somebody wants to buy it. He won't even answer that call. So it's very frustrating. Yes.
I'll just say, you know, as we talk about growth, a tool like this is important to maintain the integrity of current houses and those that are coming in, so we don't build a new housing stock and it starts to fall in disrepair over a number of years, and we just keep a same cycle going. That's just not a good way for a community to proceed.
All right. Very good.
Kathy, I'll get this meeting scheduled.
Did you hear?
You want to schedule a meeting?
I will.
Okay.
Later in the meeting, I don't know when, but I'll get a meeting scheduled.
Very good. Thank you, Scott. Lanier, what you got for me?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try to spitfire everything that I have in my report. First thing I have is ordinance 4345, the first reading to amend chapter 955 of our parks portion of the chapter to add fishing regulations. So I'm bringing that to you guys. We brought a recommendation from the Parks Board a month and a half ago to add regulations so that our residents can adequately go out to our ponds that are owned by the city and do them safely with certain parameters. The next thing that I have is a resolution for a supplemental. To get me through the year, there are some fees that are required to be paid by other organizations that I report to. There are also some other items such as uniforms, park supplies. After meeting with a certified park safety inspector, there are a few things that I would like to purchase to make sure that we are staying compliant and up to current codes. Next thing I would like to touch on my list, inclusive seats. I think it was about 2 months ago, we had Nicole Gard. She came into council stating that she was willing to purchase or have donated 3 inclusive seats to go into our parks. Those seats have been purchased. I have not heard from her as to when she will receive them, but I'm hoping when we do receive them, we could invite her to a council meeting and bring her forth in front of you. That way we could accept those donations and actually get them installed into our parks. Another thing on my list, on your desk, I gave you guys a letter of support. I've been working with the Licking County Health Department to, work to see if we can work with them and partner to develop smoking policies to eliminate smoking within our parks. So I'm bringing that to you today in hopes that you guys can provide a motion for me to be able to have one of you guys sign something to send back to the health department so that they can move forward with their grant opportunities. Last thing on my list, to piggyback with Ann Walker's presentation today, the pool will be a tough cookie, okay? She said I have my swimmies on, plus I also have to deal with my other day-to-day
things as a parks manager, everything with soccer, handling 2 employees, dealing with the maintenance of the parks. But as I reiterated to Jeff and I have no worries in a sense that I know that I can call on Andy and whenever I need them. So I'm hopeful, and I know that I'll get through it. So aside from that, I have nothing else.
Any questions for Lanier?
I have a question.
Yes.
So, is smoking permitted in the parks?
Right now, we have no policy stating that you are not allowed, but I have approached people nicely. Yeah.
Can't we just pass an ordinance that prohibits smoking in the park?
It could be, the parks rules in our codified ordinance could be amended to include that.
I'd certainly be, I'm surprised that that it is permitted. I'd certainly support an ordinance that would change so we would have no smoking or tobacco use in the park.
Andy?
The only thing, Todd, I'd mention, you know, there are people who come to programs such as the soccer programs. It has been a policy in the past, at least when we were involved, and I think Linear has taken this policy forward, is they are required to move away from the ball field or the soccer field or whatever it is, to stand back from wherever people are congregated around the park. There are a lot of people who, I'm just going to say, the stereotypical grandparent or the uncle, aunt, father, son, whatever, that come to these games to watch their kids. And our concern when we were involved with it was prohibiting the smoking in the park generally would keep them from coming to these activities, which was, while as long as they were compliant with moving away from everybody or moving away from the kids, and typically we would have an officer or one of the managers walk up and ask them politely to please step away from the crowd if you're going to smoke. I don't think we had, and Ann can correct me, I'm sure she will if I'm wrong, I don't think we ever had anybody say, you know, go fly a kite, we're going to stand right here. They always moved away without question. So it's a balancing act on that one. I'm not a proponent of smoking in the parks, but I'm a proponent of people being able to come and watch whatever participant at the game, you know, to be inclusive. So that's the flip side to it.
Yes, sir.
Just got word back from Brian McGuire. He's our Parks Board president. He did state that Reynoldsburg just passed something last year regarding smoking in their parks. So they prohibited around all of their activities, but they do allow them to smoke in their parking lots. So that's going to be a topic of discussion tomorrow at our board meeting. So maybe at our August 19th meeting, I can have some more information. But until then, I believe the letter of support is time sensitive. That was given to me, I guess, 2 weeks before it was due, so I'm already late on it. I'm not sure when the grant's done, but whatever you guys choose, I'll go with it.
Very good. Anything else for Lanier?
Just a quick question, you talked about the 3 seats, which are the handicap, right, seats?
Yes, sir.
Originally, there were 4.
Yep.
And is there, is it out of our budget that we anticipate the 4th?
We anticipate to purchase the 4th seat once we have a location identified.
Okay, but that is on, she did 3, one's on us, and do you anticipate it would be part of your budgeting process for the next?
Yes.
Okay, it's not gonna take 3 years to identify it.
No.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. King?
I will say, yeah, city committed to buying that 4th one. When and location is identified, we'll purchase it. The other thing, our policies require us to accept donations, I believe, of $500 or more, so it would be, even if it's less than $500, which I don't think it is, it would be a great thing to have her come in and accept that formally as a motion.
I actually spoke to her this weekend herself.
Very good. Chief Brooks?
Thank you, Mayor. As you touched on earlier, California was last Saturday. Went off without a hitch. There weren't any big problems. We had a few one-fingered salutes on Broad Street, but we're always expecting that. Then late last week we did 5 interviews for our open positions. We actually have 2 full-time positions and 2 part-time positions. We're very hopeful that we will be able to fill all all 4 of those spots out of the 5 interviews we did. And that is all I have tonight. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Anything for Bruce? All right, very good, sir. Committee chair reports. What do you got for me, Mr. Higgin?
I do have a utility committee chair report from July 31st, where the utility committee met. We had a couple of stuff on the agenda, a couple items. The first was the water treatment plant upgrade. Chris informed the committee that work is on schedule for that. It would begin spring of 2020. Hall got the bid for the, or Hall was awarded the project, or are they?
They're
Oh,
doing
they're
the
bidding.
design.
They're doing the
in the
design.
bidding process, yes.
So, and again, like I just looked at you there, or my other committee members, feel free to jump in. Chris touched a little bit already on the I&I for council members that aren't familiar with it. I&I is the water that creeps in to your sewer system when it rains, either through cracks in the pipes or spaces in the pipes. And the EPA, as Chris said, basically sent us this curveball and said, yeah, you got 30 days, and basically you have to get all the incoming water out of your system. Well, that's absolutely ridiculous in a system the age that we have in the village. That's absolutely insane. Kudos to Chris for getting back in touch with them. They said they sent it to council and the mayor. I've asked multiple council people, nobody ever saw it. And frankly, you know, that didn't happen. If we had agreed to it, you know, there would have been a quick implementation, a 48-month implementation, but that's quick, to remove all I&I. So the utility committee is Chris is gonna talk to the EPA about the extension. We now that we got that, and we'll move forward with telling them what we think we can do as it relates to that project. The city did release an RFQ. We got several different people that bid back, and this is in relation to the I&I project. An RFQ is kind of an interesting animal in that it's not necessarily an RFP, and different people to send you their qualifications. Then you go to the one that you think has the best qualifications, and you say, okay, what's the cost? And they can say, well, it's X, and if you don't like X, you can go to your next best one, but you can't go back to X if Y is more. That's the way the Ohio Revised Code handles RFQs. So our first, our number one, first of all, let me say 3 professionals evaluated, which was Mr. King, Mr. Haynes, and Mr. Sharrock. Thank you very much. It looks like the first one came in pretty high. So with the utility committee's blessing, if there is such a thing, we're moving on to the second one and beginning to ask those questions. Chris talked to us a little bit about the creation of an operator 2 position. It wasn't something that the committee was going to vote on, but what the operator 2 position is it's an opportunity for movement upwards within both the wastewater and water treatment sections of our city. When you move from a field tech 1 to a field tech 2, your pay goes up 7%. Seemed like a logical thing on the operator side for the same thing that would happen. It doesn't, because because we've created this new position, is not creating a new position to be filled, meaning an extra position, an extra person that you're gonna hire from outside or somebody. It's just within the system, an opportunity for advancement and recognition. And would you give me, there's 3 criteria, would you tell everybody what those are?
Yeah, the one would be 5 years as an operator with the city, so you can't come in from outside the agency. It could be a 5-year minimum time with the city. The other one was a water 1 and a wastewater 2 license, which is enough to be a backup operator of record with the EPA should our operator of record leave. We need someone to fill out the paperwork basically for the EPA. And the third one was a recommendation from the superintendent that you're demonstrating good leadership skills and work ethic.
There we go. So it's not automatic. You just don't apply to it and automatically get it. There has to be someplace in the hierarchy that they think you're doing a good enough job to get the bump. And I think the utility committee thought that was a good idea. I would hope council would feel the same. The final, I'm passing around now the picture. If you remember, we did contract for somebody to clean our water towers. I actually pulled in behind them the day I got back from vacation, and this thing was huge. But you can see it in the picture, and it did quite a great job. Kudos for that as well. That came in under budget. Just passing that around so people can see the difference between what it looked like before and after. Finally, Scenic View Estates. Scenic View Estates asked if they could speak to the committee on special occasions. Non-committee members can speak to the committee, and we did waive the ability for them to speak. They wanted to talk to us to refresh everybody's memory. Scenic View Estates is the area just, it would be just north of Hazelwood in the woods, very ravine oriented, which creates a lot of problems, not for drinking water, which we provide, but for wastewater. How are they going to get their wastewater to our plant? We have tried a variety of options. The committee decided that we would like some safeguards. My biggest concern, and I think it's the committee's biggest concern, is if you put in some newfangled system and that system fails, the Environmental Protection Agency is not going to make the owners fix it, it's gonna make the city fix it. And by not requiring a traditional gravity feed system because of some logistical problems and some money problems, or not money problems, but high cost, we wanna make sure that we don't set the city up for failure. We don't set up, whoever's sitting in this seat in 15 or 20 years, we have citizens with sewage running out the side of their houses, and all of a sudden the EPA comes back to the city and says, yeah, now it's your problem. You guys get to put in a sewage system because the developer's gone. We're trying to be as open as we possibly can to options, and at the same time, realize that these are good homes and a very unique housing system. So if we can make it happen, huzzah, but at the same time, make sure that we're protecting the city. And I would look for our committee to have another meeting. We did get some information back from the health department. Mr. Fulton and Chris and I met today to just go over some early stuff, and I think the utility committee needs to get back together to hash out some more stuff. That will almost be a sole, that would be the only purpose of the meeting, to talk about that stuff. So, and there's a little bit of time involved, but that's a lot in an update. And if anybody wants to jump in, or do you think I hit the high points? Go ahead, Andy.
Well, I just wanted to add that we feel that this development is a unique development, and we want this solution to be a unique solution for this development, because we don't want this to be the status quo for all developments. It is because of the particular topography, because of the wooded ravines. They're going to be required to do things, most likely, if they agree to them and if the zoning provides for it. But they'll have certain coverage of their lots with woods. They will be able to clear certain percentages. The way this thing will work is it's a force main, essentially a public force main that they're feeding into, and we don't, I think that I speak for myself on the committee, but I think the committee agrees that we don't want this to be in every subdivision. This isn't the fallback. The traditional gravity is the fallback way of doing it, because it's the way most cities manage sanitary. So,
and it's the way that is best.
It's the appropriate way to do it that most municipalities do. So I just wanted to add that this is a unique situation. We want to keep it that way.
I agree. I agree with that. Just want to make sure that the solution does not come back to bite us.
Correct.
Or the citizens via payment in some way for an upgrade. That's it. I am happy to answer any more direct questions if that has piqued anybody's interest.
All right.
I got a committee meeting report.
Yes, I know you do. And I was just gonna say, as far as committee, in the absence of Mel, Alan's gonna get the street committee report when we get to it.
Okay, very good. Go ahead, Andy.
So I had an agricultural meeting. We had an agricultural meeting tonight. We did discuss the revised discharge map, which is on the agenda for this evening. Removing some properties from the discharge zone over off 310. We also talked in great length, almost 50 minutes worth of discussion regarding the discharge zone and zoning requirements with commercial entities, and specifically the Bullet Ranch and the issues that have come up since they've been shooting outdoors as well as indoors. We looked through several of the codes that we currently have on the books. We also looked through the ORC statutes, and we've talked about how to make sure that the current policy of removal of property from the discharge zone when development occurs becomes more of a, it's not automatic. Obviously, council is the entity that has to remove via ordinance property from the discharge zone, but make it more of a standard step or a standard operation that if a property comes in for either commercial or residential or even public use, that it is brought to council's attention to remove, to have that option removed from the discharge zone, which is, I think, an amendment or a revision to current ordinances. Additionally, talked about making sure that we look at the Bullet Ranch in particular, but also other commercial areas that, even though they're in the discharge zone now, that doesn't automatically give them the ability to operate as a business, shooting outside, and letting them know that they need to come back for a conditional use for that. And that's something that we talked about, having the Bullet Ranch start that process with getting their paperwork in, and we understand they've got their paperwork in, and that they need to come forward for a conditional use to look at using that property for an outside shooting area. Talked a little bit with the chief and with Mr. Zetz about really making the code for the discharge zone, regardless of its commercial or residential use discharge, having the noise ordinance be less subjective. Have some definition, have it have some real ability to say this is in violation of the nuisance ordinance or the noise ordinance as defined in the discharge zone code. That's a tall order, but we're going to try to do that so that everybody can understand what a violation is, and not a subjective interpretation of a noise ordinance. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anything for Andy? Yeah, I got something. Yes. So, when I first was on council, Mr. Barstow and I tackled the issue of removing pieces of property from the discharge zone. Not ones that suddenly had a platted subdivision on them. At that time, I voted against it. And I voted against taking, and the reason I say that is we're about to vote here tonight on one. That one in particular had different members of the agriculture committee against removing it. I think from my attendance tonight that all three members of the agriculture committee are in favor of removing the said piece of property that is adjacent to homes and taking it out of the discharge zone based on the fact that at some point there have been reports that that ammo or bullets or whatever you want to call it has left that area and gone to another, and the property owner is okay with it. The reason I voted no at the time was we did not have the proper documentation to take something out, and if another instance comes before us where the committee is split or the property owner says no, I'm going to hold to that until we get that legislation in place so that it cannot be removed. That's just how I feel about it. So that's why I voted no before. That was an instance of the property owner wanted their property taken out, and the agriculture committee was split, and frankly, the citizenry was split. I don't think that's in the case here, but in my own mind, I can say, look, that's not
different situation, different sets of criteria. But if we begin to get situations where the committee is split, or the property owner, says, well, wait a minute, I don't want my property taken out. I don't think I'm gonna vote to do that.
So in response to that, Tim, I think, I agree with you. I think it hinged, for me at least, it was, did the property owner agree to it? That's a big piece to this puzzle. I think the other side of it would be also if it's an absentee property owner who isn't monitoring his property, and there are people trespassing and shooting on it without his permission, and there's evidence of that, I would bring that up as an issue that could be part of the discussion or part of the equation. But certainly if the property owner says, yeah, take it out, I want it out, I have no issue with taking it out at that point. And that was a big piece to the discussion this evening.
The other thing I don't know, Mr. Barstow's smiling at me, you might wanna say something, I don't know. He doesn't, good. The other thing is, I wanna be clear that the Bullet Ranch was never told that you don't have to apply for a conditional use for the outside stuff. I heard talk on the committee where they're like, well, they only really asked for archery. I wanna make sure that that's true, because I have heard different things. I said I might put bows and arrows, I might shoot outside. Do I need to get one? Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I just wanna be clear that if at some point the city said you don't have to get a conditional use, and now the city is going back and saying, oh, we changed our mind, that's different than what I think we're being presented with here tonight. And I wanna make sure those facts bear out. That we said, hang on, we're not gonna process it because we don't know. And if that's the case, then okay. But I wanna make sure that that's the case. Because I wasn't allowed to talk during the committee meeting, or I'd have created a quorum. So I'm throwing that question out, realizing we're gonna get to it in 1 second.
So when the Bullet Ranch was originally approved with their conditional use, it was for a sporting goods store, which is a permitted use in the general business district, and an accessory use of the indoor gun range. And that was 12-13, they got a conditional use to allow it, and then they got the Transportation Corridor Overlay District approval for site design. So at that time, all the documentation never referenced an outdoor shooting range. The only reference they had in that documentation was the potential for archery outside. So they only talked about indoor range, potential for archery. At no point in either of those staff reports, meeting minutes, any documentation we could find on file did they mention, and we're also gonna shoot outdoors. So when there were concerns raised about the noise related to the outdoor range at the Bullet Ranch, we reviewed that documentation, and the property owner came in and said, well, I'll just apply for a conditional use again. And I said, well, don't submit your fee. If it's determined that that's the route we go, we'll have this waiting for you, come in, submit your fee, we'll file the paperwork and move forward. So since then, we've been having the discussions of, does zoning trump? Does the discharge zone trump? Does he need a conditional use? Does he not? So it's been sitting in our office waiting for him to complete the application process. But at this point, I have not told Mr. Garavuzza that yes, you need a conditional use.
But I understand that is the direction that the committee is going, and I don't know if that means council, because I don't see it on the agenda to vote on tonight.
It's not on the agenda tonight because it's gonna have to be a code change, so we're gonna have to draft the code ordinance and go 3 readings for it.
Fair enough. I'm just trying to get my hands around it, because it's not being involved in the conversation.
Yeah, and as Scott said, we found ourselves in this period of uncertainty. It's in it's not to rehash it all, property's in the discharge, they're shooting outside, does that mean so I think the direction that the committee came up with tonight is an appropriate direction to go with it, and I think it'll help address the issue now and if it happens again in the future.
It's an absolute ball of snakes, and I thank the committee for undertaking it.
Well, I appreciate Mr. Aiken bringing up the good old days of 2014. But, yeah, it's tough because, I'm the personal opinion, I mean, if Mr. Garabusa come into my office and me acting privately and then said, hey, do I have to get some permission to go outside and shoot shotguns or pistol guns? No, just read that ordinance. You blast away as long as you don't bother people, but he's exempt from that. So, under 1583 or whatever it is, you know, we saw tonight. So, but he didn't say he was gonna do that when he came in initially. I don't know when that plan was hatched, when he decided he was gonna have an outdoor range. So it is the intersection of zoning and the discharge zone. And again, I don't, Mr. Rickon, if you were here during that portion, I mean, I had several fairly lengthy conversations with Mr. Fox and with Mr. Brush, who were around when we did the merger, and they were on ag for a long, long time. It was their belief that commercial use was not contemplated in the merger agreement. It was recreational use, farmer shooting varmints.
Getting back to the
that.
spirit of what it was.
Right, this is not what it was for, it's not for a commercial entity, so that's kind of where that's where I was going. I appreciate it, thank you.
Any other committee reports?
Street
committee. Street committee, Mr. Haynes.
Thank you, Mayor. We had a street committee meeting last Monday, July 29th. First item we talked about was the 2020 paving project. Provided a list of potential streets for that project. We worked to narrow that down, and I will be working further to put some numbers to those projects so that we can whittle that down to what we want to do next year, as well as discuss the potential budget for next year's paving project. The second item, which I'd ask Mike or Suzanne to correct me if I'm wrong, was for the Taylor Road drainage project. I don't believe we had a recommendation or a motion for the resolution that's on tonight, but there was general consensus among the committee that to move forward with that. So that again is the Taylor Road drainage project for the resolution tonight, Taylor and Berry. We discussed some drainage issues. The first was along Monarch Drive, which is in the Glenbrook subdivision, the retention basin that will overflow and flood the street. Of course, we had done a supplemental earlier in the year to put some money for that project to put a new outlet structure on that. I've been working with Hall to finish up some project documents, and we'll be getting a few contractors out there to take a look at that and give us a proposal for it. Next is Haloon Lane drainage project. We talked a little bit about that. We've got a couple of the larger major drainage issues that have large price tags to them. We talked a little bit about trying to break those up into smaller projects to try and include some money in the budget to do some things in-house with them. And specifically with Haloon Lane, Bobby Carr, a local farmer I think a lot of people are familiar with, tried to work with us to install some drainage tile across the field that serves Haloon Lane. He found a 12-inch tile in there that was about 3/4 full and tried to work with us to replace that. Unfortunately, we couldn't move quick enough to meet his schedule, but he did call me back a couple days later and said, hey, this is the right thing to do. I'm going to go ahead and replace it. Just want to, be partners with the city and do what's right, and hopefully we can continue basically to work together in the future. And then we talked about a couple project updates. The Mink Street Phase 2 project, which is basically the punch list work is in progress. There's some culverts, some driveway culverts that are being extended. Original design went with the original lengths, but with the deeper ditches, they're kind of steep next to the driveway, so we're going to extend a couple of those. And again, punch list is in progress. Taylor Road Path Project, that one again, we talked a little bit about the punch list being on project, of course being ODOT managed. We also talked about, there's a couple areas where we have some safety concerns that didn't really appear to be addressed by the design. That specifically next to the creek on the west side where the sidewalk is very close to the creek. So we had reached out to MP Dory, who did the fences that are on the other side, and asked them for a proposal. So to do 200 feet in that location and another 200 feet at a location further to the south, which is next to Faith Ann Drive. The path takes a jog, there's a head wall and drop off. That was actually, for that type of fence, which is fairly substantial, it's $20,000 price tag from them, well, $18,700. And they did the original fence on the project. We were surprised by that number. So I'm probably gonna look to see if I can find somebody else who would do that, and also see if we can find some money in the budget to absorb some of that to get that done sooner than later. We'd originally wanted to do some split rail fence, which we could do in-house a lot cheaper, but I don't know that it would match as well and last as long. So we're trying to work through that. Next thing we talked about was the Public Service Department personnel. We've talked about adding a full-time position to the Public Service Department next year, and doing some restructuring as well. Currently, we have 7 employees effectively, or 7 crew members, 1 superintendent, and then myself. We want to add 1 full-time position, create 2 crew leader positions, and then have 6 crew positions. Of course, it was met with a little bit of chuckling when I said marketing and sales isn't my forte. So we talked about how to present that to get everybody on the same page. In my mind, it's clear we can do more maintenance, we can do more improvements with more people. Let's all work on putting something together to show the necessity for that. Along with that, we're looking to try and add 1 to 2 seasonal positions to help out with mowing. So we've got a lot of mowing to do. Years like this where we get caught with the rain, we get behind pretty easily. That takes a lot of time. Last thing we talked about was bridges. Recently worked with Stone Engineering to do supplementary bridge inspections. ODOT does annual bridge inspections, but those only show a rating system. They don't give any kind of recommendations. So Stone Engineering provided that. From that, we're going to create basically a bridge asset management program. We've started to identify that, and I'll be working to build that into the budget and the CIP for the upcoming years. Aside from that, happy to answer any questions.
Yes.
Alan, what kind of fences are they proposing for $100 a foot?
This is, if you've seen what's out there on the east side, it's 6x6s with 2x12s.
So those are all traffic rated.
Yes.
Yes.
So these that you're talking about potentially using are not traffic rated.
No, it's the same thing.
So you need traffic rated guardrail type fencing.
That's the question.
Okay, that's a question.
That is the question. If that's what we want to go with, which was what our original idea was, not realizing the price tag was going to be that much for that amount of fence.
I'd love to, roll up my sleeves with you and figure that one out, because I have a feeling that you don't need the traffic rated guardrail type fence. So anyhow, certainly would like to look at it. If you do it 4-board type fence, you're talking $3,500.
I was expecting something a little bit cheaper when we first sought this.
Okay, great.
Anything else for Alan? Okay, any other committee chair reports? Okay, on to unfinished business here. Ordinance 2019-4343 for a second reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow, seconded by Mr. Powell. Kathy?
Ordinance 2019-4343, this is the second reading, an ordinance to make supplemental appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2019.
Discussion? All right, on to new business. Ordinance 2019-4344 for first reading.
So moved. Second.
Moved by, I believe, Mr. Hicken, and seconded by Mr. Barstow. Kathy, when you're ready, first reading.
Ordinance 2019-4344, this is the first reading, an ordinance to revise section 505.11C of the codified ordinances of the city of Pataskala, Licking County, Ohio.
Discussion? Ordinance 2019-4345 for a first reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Walther. Kathy, when you're ready, first reading.
Ordinance 2019-4345, this is the first reading, an ordinance creating, establishing, and adopting section 955.13 fishing of the codified ordinances of the city of Pataskala.
Discussion? Resolutions. Resolution 2019-050 is tabled. Resolution 2019-053, a resolution authorizing and directing the city administrator to execute an operating lease agreement with the Gordon Fletch Company, Inc. for the acquisition of a multi-function copier and associated maintenance agreement for the utility department.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow, seconded by Mr. Powell. Discussion? Yes.
Hey Jamie, just a quick question on this, another, in the state, cost, what does it cost to buy a copier? I mean, you were really gonna spend it about 10 grand over 4 years. What does it cost to buy a copier? Do you have any idea?
I can get you that number. You typically, the interest capitalization on these leases is typically fairly low, talking 3% or so, 3 to 4%.
So it's pretty cheap one.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Any other discussion? Roll, please.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Barstow.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 2019-058, a resolution to accept and confirm infrastructure improvements for Hazelwood Section 6, Part 1, development for public maintenance and operation by the city of Pataskala.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow, seconded by Mr. Powell. Discussion and roll.
Lee,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Barstow.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 2019-060, resolution authorizing and directing the city administrator to execute a contract with American Structure Point, Inc. to perform engineering design services for the Taylor Road Storm Sewer Improvement Project.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow, seconded by Mr. Powell. Discussion? And roll.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Barstow.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Resolution passes. On to motions. Motion approving the report of administrator and instructing clerk of council to notify county auditor of charges associated with cutting of noxious weeds for purposes of assessment against real estate at 128 Main Street, parcel number 064-30971-4-00.000.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Barstow and seconded by Mr. Powell. Kathy, when you're ready.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Hicken.
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Motion passes. Motion approving the report of administrator and instructing clerk of council to notify county auditor of charges associated with cutting of noxious weeds for purposes of assessment against real estate at 0 Summit Road, parcel number 063-149556-00.000.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow and seconded by Mr. Walter. Discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
BJ, this is the one that has the incorrect zip code. Did we get, are we relying on that service for this assessment?
I did not have an opportunity between leadership to talk to Scott. We certainly could table this till the next meeting and confirm that the zip code and address was correct.
Is it, all right, so, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move that we table this motion for the 0 Summit Road assessment.
Yeah, motion to table, seconded by Mr. Walker. Discussion?
Scott, did you have something to weigh in on that? I saw you.
No, I just don't know what happened, like what the issue was.
The zip code's incorrect. The zip code that's listed in the council packet is 43070. It's for Summit Station. The zip code at Summit Station is 43073. So my question is, are we relying on certified mail service or mail service as the basis for this assessment?
This is a gentleman that passed away, and we have that property, so we could go to the tax mailing address and send it to him, but we know no one's gonna receive it. So when we amended the code, we did it that if you don't know the property owner, you post it on or the address of the property, you post it on the property, and then we put it online, because we could do it both ways via electronic means. So we posted it in conjunction with that. There was no mailings because we knew it would go to no one.
So nothing got sent out.
Correct, and that's in compliance with the code, that if the address of the property owner is unknown, that you post it on the property, and then you can either put it in the paper or post it on our website. one of the two. We posted it on our website.
Did you check with probate court to see if the estate's been open for the, wait, let me back up. We know who the owner is.
We know who the owner is.
It's listed in the county property records.
That's correct, but we don't know the address of the property owner.
If there's no tax mailing address?
There's a P.O. box in Summit Station, but we
Okay.
know if we send it to the P.O. box that no one will receive it. We talked to the probate court and got them to the next of kin. They were not interested in purchasing the property. We talked to the Licking County Land Bank, and the taxes were not in arrears enough at this point that they were interested in the property. So right now, it's kind of we're in limbo.
We were not relying on mail service.
That's correct.
Okay, then I'll withdraw my motion to table.
Okay, back to the original motion.
Is the second withdrawn?
I'll withdraw. Sure.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim.
Thanks for explaining that.
All right, back to the original motion. Any other discussion? Kathy, roll please.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Motion,
Walter,
Yes.
motion passes. On to additional citizens' comments. Anybody wish to speak? Okay, seeing none, what do you got for me, Mr. Barstow?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we go into executive session pursuant to revised code section 121.22G3 to conference with an attorney for the city concerning a dispute involving the city that is the subject of pending court action. Invited into this executive session are B.J. King, City Administrator, Brian Zetz, Law Director, Chris Schrock, Utility Director.
Got a motion, seconded by Mr. Powell. Discussion and roll.
Hayes,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Okay, executive session at 9:17. We're going upstairs. Session.
Do you wanna wait for everybody to be here?
So moved. Second.
Second.
who seconded that?
Hicken.
Barstow and Hicken.
Hicken moved, I second.
Okay. Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Okay, out of executive session at 9:51. Let's go around the room. Since you're leaving, you got anything?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
I got
two
things to say. I have one thing, guys, if you don't mind.
You got a motion to adjourn in a second.
talking for?
You knew I was gonna do that.
Because he wanted to go, he wanted to get back to the fair.
Go. It's late.
Go ahead,
Andy
Tim.
has
Tim.
something.
Andy has
I
something.
don't have anything past
Start
me.
with Tim. Start with Tim.
Go ahead, Tim.
I have two things. Number one, I didn't say anything during the PRA stuff, but super huge thanks to PRA for all the time and the effort and the money, and to Mr. Chapman, who just absolutely rocked. I saved that for the unknown purpose. The other thing was the police department, the fire department. Anytime you single out a local business, it's dangerous because there might have been other businesses involved, but Papa Joe's Barbecue donated a bunch of food. I saw him at Sam's Club the next day during the Oaks fire. He said that's what a good business does. Thanks to them, the Nazarene Church, the street crew who moved beds. Everybody has talked about the Oaks fire. That was the first day back from vacation. I was jet lagged. I ended up going up to the fire station. They said, Tommy Lee was there because all of our units were out, so they sent Mifflin over. They were like, the mayor called me, Mr. Barstow called me. We implemented the process exactly how it was supposed to work. But when it works like that and the community kicks, there's nothing better. And I'm done now.
Mr. Powell?
Nothing.
Mr. Barstow?
Nothing.
Mr. Zetz?
Nothing.
Mr. Walter?
I just wanted to mention, and I know this was mentioned by the mayor and by Alan, Mr. Carr, I think that he deserves a lot of applause, a lot of thank you. He called me when this was going on with the drainage. He convinced the owner of the property to buy the material, and then he put it in. He didn't have to. He did it for the city to resolve a enormous drainage problem that the city's had for years and years and years. Bobby did a fantastic job.
You talking Halloon?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've told him I can't thank him enough, but, you know.
I think, yeah, something from the mayor or.
Something, I would like to do.
One of your awards.
One of your awards, bring him in.
Bobby is,
Resolution.
he'll hate it and it'll be great.
Yeah, yeah,
You do
I'm
that,
all for that, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Thanks, that's it.
Yep.
I have nothing.
Say it, Tommy.
Thank you to the fire department, and I need to schedule buildings and grounds for 14th August. I'm gonna change the time to 9:30 for Scott because of childcare.
Need a motion to adjourn.
It's already been moved and seconded, just waiting on a roll.
That was all discussion.
That was all discussion.
Who was the second?
I was the
Yes,
second.
we all unanimously said.
Lee?
I got beat down, so.
Lee?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes?
Howe?
Yes.
Barstow?
Yes.
Hayes?
Yes.
Pickens?
Meeting adjourned.
Good night.
DJ?
Night, everyone.
Yes.
Looks like I won't be here too long tomorrow.
Okay.
Well, Jessica post that notice when you have the, we'll make sure. of that, so.
Yeah. See you, Todd.
I'll be
Don,
here
take
for
care.
probably about an
You sent me a
hour.
reminder email in the morning.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll put the permits together and everything.
Okay.
Bye, Beach. See ya. Bye,
And
Cap.
I'll come in, I'm gonna run all
So did you
the
have a good time?
ordinances
I don't
through,
know.
and I may have to wait a few minutes when I get back, or if she wants to do them, that's fine too. Either way you guys wanna do.
See how it all goes.
What about the assessments? Do you want someone to take them down, or do you want me to do them when I get back, or?
Take them down to
They have to go to Newark, to the,
get on the property bills?
yeah,
Well,
you go to the auditor's
but there's
office.
still other action that needs done by council after the 14-day time period expires, I believe.
No, we just take them down after they're voted
Let me
on.
check with Brian. 'Cause
Okay.
They've spelled out the steps and everything.
No, not those assessments.
Oh, I thought you meant
The
you.
weeds.
Oh, okay.
I have them ready on my desk with a little note attached
Okay.
explaining it if someone.
Let me
can-
talk to Scott, maybe Steve can zip down with him or
Okay,
something.
they go to the county auditor's office, just ask for, I think it's Kathy that
Okay.
does the special assessments.
Okay.
Like that, so.
Sounds good. I'm gonna go eat some dinner.
Okay.
Woo! All right, well, I'll talk to you in the morning.
Oh, I got one more thing to show you. I'm crazy.
Confirmed?
We bought a bridge
What are you doing with that?
for the goats to go across.
Where did you buy that?
I found that on Overstock.
Kathy,
It's a toy for my goats.
this time off may be bad for you. You may end up buying stuff every day. All right, see you in the morning.
Okay.